there ever been any situations where you've had to like fire a client?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, multiple clients have been fired. So she really knew how to kind of like push buttons where necessary. She would mess around with her appointment times, come in super late, think because she tipped me generously that I would take her at any given time of day. She would want 8 a.m. appointments, which is for me an absolute no-go. I start at 10. I will never start earlier than 10 unless it is a wedding service. So when somebody thinks that their money talks more so and expect you to just be present because money, but it's not how it goes in this environment anymore.
I've never really had to fire a client. I think sometimes it's difficult when you go to a store and you see a client that you haven't seen in forever and you always wonder like, oh, what did I do wrong? Why don't you come back and see me?
Yeah, I've had to fire probably 2 or 3 clients before. It's never something you want to do, but it gets to a point where if somebody is sucking all the energy out of you, you don't have to do that anymore. You can tell somebody no, and learning to say no is definitely a hard thing for stylists, I feel. But I had such anxiety about it at first, but then, you know, I just simply said, I was like, you know, my number one goal as a stylist is to make my client happy. And, you know, I feel like I can't make you happy, so maybe you would be better off trying somebody else. And, you know, and they were just like, okay. Like, they're not going to argue, you know, what are they going to do, force you to do their hair?
The anxiety that comes along with that, definitely rough, because I am a people pleaser. I'm trying to work on my people-pleasing self. I can't make everybody happy. But when you have to confront somebody, again, with kindness and clarity, it still is kind of heart-wrenching. It still hurts.
And recognize that some people have, you know, and with mental illness being out and you are with them, you know, you don't know what that person grew up like. I mean, you could be their only sense of normalcy. That's the truth of it. I mean, I was young. I was probably like 23, 24. And I had been doing this client's hair for a while. And it was always a process having her marriage. I had to do a very certain way. It was a lot of the stimulation going on in the salon. This setup would be great for her, you know, quiet. But she like wrote me this letter and told me all of her private things that happened to her and shared them with me. And here I was like, oh my gosh, here's this person. So and I think don't take that for granted. You know that that's a big part. Rather than you just doing their hair, you are there to really, I think, above just to make them feel good. I mean,
being a hairdresser, they say, you know, you're like a therapist, and I feel like that's a huge part of it because we don't just provide a service. We also have to listen to people, and we hear sad stories, happy stories, and, you know, I've gone through things with my clients, you know, clients that have had cancer. I've had to shave their heads, and I'm an empath, so I take on those emotions with them. I can feel, you know, when they're going through something or struggling. I can feel it right away before anybody says anything.
Yeah, I've definitely had some, like I said, and I take that and I don't share it with, you know, with Jane. Sometimes maybe I may say something to my husband or like, oh my goodness, my client, I feel so bad. But then sometimes I just kind of keep it to myself because, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad I can be there for them.
Yeah, I'd say that's for sure happened. You come home really burned out and, you know, exhausted, and it's hard to connect with people in your personal life if you feel like you're giving everything at work. We often spend more time at work than we do at home. Yeah. Right?
So Saturday I came home, you know, same, I had worked Friday, a pretty long day, and then Saturday, my last client, I started at like 3:30, and she was pretty much like a balayage, and she had very thick hair, and I didn't get home till almost 8, but yeah, and took a really long shower, and I just laid in bed, and I felt bad. I didn't really talk to anybody, my kids or anything. My husband put them to bed for me. But yes, definitely get talked out. I'm exhausted.
So there was a lot of discussion with my partner at home and hard nights where, you know, I just couldn't deliver for my family because everything was gone by the time I got home.
Yeah, people are like, oh, it must be so great to be with someone who does hair. You must get your hair done all the time. I was like, no. It's actually probably terrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, we don't get our own hair done either.
Sometimes I just sit and just stare off and absorb it all, and my body hurts, you know. Sometimes, you know, hurts a little bit. And I get in my car and I just get the feeling like I just want to go home, and the anxiety comes up, and sometimes I walk in the door like frazzled, and not always, just because I just need to settle a little bit.
Now, when it comes to my friends, that's a little different because of the type of person I am, I actually am also, as a friend, like the advice giver, the like, you know, I've always got like a solid perspective and people will call me, you know, if I haven't heard from somebody while all of a sudden my phone is ringing, you know, it's kind of like, oh, something's up, like I got a problem, they got to talk to me. And like, unfortunately, I do have less of a well for that. And that's kind of sucky when you don't even have the bandwidth to like get on the phone with a friend.
I'm super quiet at home. I'm totally talked out. My social circle is super small and intimate, and I like it that way. I'm not a huge fan of big outings. Once I'm home, I just want to unwind, and I do think my job is to blame for some antisocial behavior when I get home. My boyfriend is a barber, though, so he's really understanding, and he gets it.
What I find happens at the end of my workday is I'll say goodbye to my last appointment, I'll lock the door, and generally I'll just sit down in my chair for like a half hour, just like mindlessly scrolling through my phone, just like no interaction, just, I guess, mind candy, right? Like free dopamine. Trying to decompress and stop using my brain for a little bit before I get in my car, before I clean up, before I go back home. When I come home, my husband knows to keep conversation light. Don't go too deep into conversation. We leave that for breakfast.
I have to remind myself that like your friends are there for you too, and that's your time. Because a lot of times I do think like I got my social time out of the way. Like that box is checked. I'm like fulfilled socially, but then it's like, then I'm reminding myself, but these are not friendships. It's a client relationship. And like I said, I'm not being this vulnerable person myself where then I'm, you know, getting the back and forth, like your receipt, but it still does like fulfill my extroverted side to where I'm like, I need like full intro. I need like solitude on my free time. And I think that is kind of negative, to be honest. I feel like I should have more relationships that are like just for me, but I don't really have as much bandwidth to hear more problems. I mean, not that that's like what every friendship is about, but when it's like, let's catch up, let's chit chat, you know, and it's just like, I've been like literally doing that all day and I need silence and I don't want to catch up. And I actually like have dread when my phone rings. Like I want silence.